celebrating the storytellers who widen our horizons. Authors on the Air.
Once you're done, you forget just how hard it was to really kind of pull all those threads together, and you're so happy about this final thing being on the page. It's like, oh, well, that couldn't have been that bad, was it? Well, then you start the next one. It's like, oh, my God.
Brian Freeman is a New York Times and Amazon charts best-selling author of more than 24 psychological thrillers, including the Jonathan Stride and Frost Easton series. He is widely acclaimed for his You Are There settings, his complex, engaging characters, and twist-filled plots. Brian was also selected as the official author to continue Robert Ludlum's Jason Bourne series. Kirkus Reviews named The Bourne Evolution one of the best thrillers of 2020. His newest is The Ursulina, a prequel to his Edgar Award-nominated original The Deep, Deep Snow, where his protagonist embarks on a dark journey to reveal the truth about the Ursulina, a journey that ultimately leads to an excruciating choice that will change her life forever.
Well, the Ursulina started actually with a previous book, a novel called The Deep, Deep Snow. And we had such an amazing run with The Deep, Deep Snow. It was an Edgar Award finalist and a New York Times bestseller. But it was the story of a rural sheriff's deputy named Shelby Lake, who was abandoned as a baby. And she's dealing with a long-standing mystery that runs over the course of 10 years. She's dealing with dementia for her father, who's actually the sheriff of the county. And it's once again a very emotional mystery with a lot of twists and turns. But I deliberately sort of leave Shelby's parentage open at the end of the book. And partly, it wasn't even that I was thinking that I would write a follow-up book, but it was really sort of that I like to have a layer of ambiguity that, we don't always get all the answers that we want in life. And this was one that Shelby sort of has to live with in terms of not knowing some of the answers about where she came from. But when I was talking with my publisher about a follow-up book, I could have done simply another straightforward mystery involving Shelby Lake, and yet I thought it would be more compelling and more dramatic if I explained Shelby's origin, and so the Ursulina goes back in time, and people have asked me, is it a standalone novel? Is it a prequel to The Deep, Deep Snow? Is it a follow-up novel to The Deep, Deep Snow? And my answer is yes, because, the books do stand on their own. You don't have to have read them both, and yet there's an emotional richness that comes in with reading together, reading the books together. Does the Ursulina go back in time as sort of a prequel to The Deep, Deep Snow? Absolutely. Most of the novel takes place in the past. And yet, does it also kind of carry The Deep, Deep Snow forward and resolve things from that book? Absolutely. So it's all of those things. I think these two books work closer hand in hand than just about anything I've done. So even though they kind of stand apart, they also fit together hand in glove. So that was where the story of the Ursulina came from.
What's the attraction to darkness? Because you write dark very well.
It's an interesting phenomenon because I am such a not dark person. And it's actually kind of fun when I do events because I think I kind of take readers by surprise because I'm sitting there telling jokes and we're laughing and inevitably when we get to the question session, somebody, kind of gets up the courage to ask gosh, you're really not as scary as I thought you'd be. But I think that my books can be dark, but they also tend to be very emotional, and I like to write thrillers that have that emotional core because I think that's what we can really take away from it in terms of the human experience. So it's kind of a strange thing in some ways for a thriller writer to say, but when I hear from a reader that says, gosh, I was, in tears at the end of your book, to me, that's like the highest compliment that I can get as a writer because it means you're that invested in the characters that their fate really matters to you. And I think to get there, sometimes that means going to some dark places.
How do you write such engaging characters?
Well, thank you. I appreciate I appreciate the comment, and these characters really get inside my heart, and that's why I want them to get inside the reader's heart as well. Somebody said something on a show I did a few days ago that I really appreciated. He said it's clear to me that your characters are real to you and feel real to you, and I think honestly that's what it's all about. I mean, these are not creations. To me, they are three-dimensional real people, and I treat them that way, and I treat them with respect. I mean, it's sort of a strange thing to say, and people look at me a little funny when I say this, but I think particularly when you're writing a first-person narration, which both the Deep, Deep Snow and the Ursulina are, that is a very delicate relationship between author and character, because to me, it's like that character needs to develop a level of trust in you to be willing to let you tell their story, and you have to treat them with respect, and you have to sort of earn the right to tell their story. And as odd as that sounds, that's something I definitely feel in bringing these characters to life, because I can kind of tell when a character is kind of resisting letting me inside, and so I have to sort of keep pushing chapter by chapter to get them to open up to me and share secrets that in many cases I didn't know when I was plotting out the book. And so I think while that actually can make the writing process sort of harder and more neurotic, it adds to the depth and spontaneity of the story, because it really means that I'm discovering and learning about these characters and getting closer to them as I write the book, and hopefully so is the reader.
You're the master of plot twists. How do you build those wireframes?
I love twisty books, absolutely. I always want you to never know what's coming on the next page, and there's a couple things about that. I mean, one is structural. I tend to write my books in such a way that at the end of every chapter there's kind of a hook that makes you want to turn the page to see what happens next. And in a lot of cases, what I'll do is actually shift to a different part of the story at that point. So you have to read on to the end of that chapter before you get back to where you were. Well, but then there's another hook and twist, and sort of the result is, that the next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. and the bag of Doritos is empty, and you're like, where did those last 5 hours go? So some of it is structural, but for me, I'm never satisfied with my outline. I do an outline, I do a backstory, I kind of know where the story is going. But as I'm writing the book, as I'm actually getting the words on the page, I'm always looking for new directions. And the characters, in many cases, are the ones that take me there. But I'm never satisfied with what's in the outline. I'm always looking for more twists as they go. And so it means that in a lot of cases, the story takes shape as I'm telling it, and it means that it gets even twistier than I'd originally envisioned it. And I've learned to give myself a little freedom as I'm crafting the story, to not feel like I've got to have every answer in every chapter done before I start. I kind of know the big picture framework, the skeleton of the book, but I'm filling in a lot as I go. And the Ursulina is a great example of that, because I would say the last couple of chapters of the Ursulina are among my favorites of anything I've done in terms of the ending of a book. I mean, I'm always pleased when I make that jaw drop with the reader at the same time that you're also feeling this huge emotional wave. But I didn't know exactly how I was going to end the Ursulina and pull all the threads together until I was almost at that chapter. I mean, I knew what the big twist was, but how I was going to actually sort of resolve the characters, I was sort of letting that get out there until I was near the end of the book, because at that point I felt like all of the emotions and the characters and where the story would be at a point where it would feel right to me to exactly how to pull this all together. And that was how it happened. So I knew kind of the big plot twist behind the book, but I was letting the story unfold before I decided exactly how I was going to close out Rebecca's story.
Every one of us who ever took up a keyboard has the dream of being a New York Times best-selling author. How'd you do it?
There's no easy recipe, for success. And, I've been at this now for 18 years, and man, all I can say is you just have to keep knocking on the door. I mean, there are some, very fortunate authors that happen to get lightning in a bottle, and if you're fortunate enough to kind of hit the pop culture buzz and get the reviews in People and all those kinds of other things, that's a big help. But otherwise, man, it's just slogging a while, book by book, year by year. You build relationships with readers, you build relationships with reviewers and booksellers, and you try to tell great stories, and you hope that the audience starts growing and following you along the route. But yeah, I wish there was a magic formula, but really it's just a question of trying to get readers to be your advocates, going out there and telling everybody else. I mean, publishing's still one of the last great word of mouth businesses.
So many of us that write are introverts by nature. You're so universally loved. Do you think that has something to do with your popularity?
Well, Marcia and I we are introverts. I mean, the funny thing is most people don't believe that because, I mean, we're sort of pretty comfortable in the promotions and events and things like that. But it's something we've had to kind of, teach ourselves. And it requires, a lot of emotional, endurance. I mean, you have to kind of really steel yourself. I mean, it's funny when we haven't done many live events, but we've done hundreds of them over the years. And literally, as we get into the parking lot of a library or bookstore, I mean, Marcia and I will look at each other and go, "Okay, smiles on," because you just have to get yourself worked up, and then once we're done with the event, we kind of crash after that. But that's one thing I've really missed these past couple of years, not being able to do live events, is for me, and for Marcia too. I mean, we feed off the energy of the audience and the readers. I mean, seeing their expressions, seeing their faces and how they're reacting to what I'm saying. I mean, that you just take that energy away from the crowd. And, spending all this time the last couple of years, and event means I'm staring at my own face on the screen. It's, I'm getting kind of tired of looking at myself.
How would you describe your style as a writer?
Yeah, good question. Because the one of the things I've really enjoyed about the last several years is I have been able to push my craft into a lot of different directions. I mean, I've taken over Robert Ludlum's Jason Bourne series, which is so different from my own novels. I mean, it's very, pure adrenaline, plot-driven kinds of books. I still write my Jonathan Stride police procedural series, and now I'm doing some really out there standalones and in very different voices. But for me, that's what keeps it fun and energizing, because I think if I was writing the same kind of book time after time, it would get stale for me as an artist. So I love being able to, put down, one book which has been very emotional, intense, and psychological, and next up is Jason Bourne. So suddenly I'm, bodies are dropping everywhere. And the good thing is, I mean, readers ask me, well, what's your brand as a writer? And I'll say, well, my brand is I'm going to try to tell you great stories with characters that you become very attached to. And beyond that, they may be totally different from book to book and story to story. And I just hope you'll come along for the ride in the same way that you never know what Tom Hanks is going to do in a movie next. He's done so many different movies over the years, but he's going to deliver a great performance. And if you watch one of his movies, odds are you're going to fall in love with it. I hope people end up feeling the same way about my books.
How did the relationship with the Ludlum estate come about?
Yeah, that was such an amazing experience. I had been talking with my agent for a couple of years about the idea that I'd seen a lot of this legacy publishing going on. And I said, for me, it's fun to just be able to be writing different things. I just enjoy the craft and pushing in new directions. So I had told her, this is something I'd love to take a shot at, whether it's, co-writing, ghostwriting, taking on, somebody's estate project. And so we talked about this for a couple of years, and then she called me, must have been 2.5 years ago or so, and said that Putnam had taken over the rights to the Jason Bourne series, and they in the estate were looking for a new author to take over. And was I interested in kind of tossing my hat into the ring? And I said, yeah, let's go for it. I mean, I knew that there would be dozens of authors that would be going after an opportunity like this, but I'd been a Ludlum fan my whole life. I can remember reading The Bourne Identity when I was 17 years old, and so I'd always been a Jason Bourne fan. I'm one of the few people that remembers that Jason Bourne was originally not Matt Damon, but was Richard Chamberlain in a mini series with Jacqueline Smith, I think, that came out in 1989. And I was such a Bourne fan that when I would be sick from work, the way I made myself feel better is I'd put on the VHS of Richard Chamberlain in The Bourne Identity. So I said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And I think about 4 months went by, and I didn't hear a word, and I just assumed that they had chosen to go another way. And then I got a call from my agent again, and I think it was February of 2019, I guess it was. And she just, gave me a one-sentence intro that I'll remember for the rest of my life. Putnam wants you for Bourne. And so my first reaction was, oh my God, I'm going to be taking over the Jason Bourne series. And my next reaction was, oh my God, I'm going to be taking over the Jason Bourne series. So, I've got to give the estate and Putnam a lot of credit that they were very supportive of the direction that I wanted to take the series. Because I talked to Tom Colgan at Putnam and said, there have been so many iterations of Jason Bourne over the years that I don't think we can simply try to continue what's been done in the past. I said, I think what we need to do is go back to Ludlum's original character and what kind of character he was building and try to isolate what has made him such an enduring, iconic hero all these years. And that was what I tried to do, was really go back to Ludlum's original vision for Jason Bourne as you meet him in The Bourne Identity, and then take that character and drop him down into a modern setting. So essentially, it's kind of rebooting the series and starting the series over in a lot of ways with the character at the forefront. And they loved that idea. That's what we did in The Bourne Evolution, and so that's what it's been ever since. The Bourne Treachery, then the second one came out last summer, and I just turned in the third one about 3 weeks ago. So that's coming out in July.
How long does it take you to write a book from start to finish?
Well, the Bourne Sacrifice, that was quite a sprint. I think it's about 100,000 words, and I think 80,000 of those words were between the first week in December and mid-January. So it was just an insane pace. I've never written a book that fast. And yet the funny thing is, for Bourne, it really works because I think there is an urgency to the style and the plotting and the pacing that it is just perfect for a Bourne novel. And so I think the dynamism of that kind of it comes through in the writing process. And so it's exactly the kind of story you want from a Jason Bourne book. So, but I've been doing 3 books a year now for the last 3 years. And, so it's sort of, there's a limited amount of time on each book, but fortunately I've been doing this long enough that I kind of have a process that works for me, and I know how much time it takes to do any individual component of the storytelling. So I try not to let it stress me out, but that doesn't always work.
It's taken 18 years, but you've achieved success that many of us only dream of. Does it feel like you've arrived?
I'm at a point where at least I feel like I don't have anything to prove with my books. I mean, I've had amazing success in so many different areas, and I get such great feedback from people that read the books, and I've had some wonderful things happen to me in terms of awards and reviews and things. But so I don't feel like I have anything to prove with my books, but I'm never going to feel like, well, gosh, I've made it. I mean, I'm still feeling like each book I do, I want that to be another great story, and each book I write is as hard as any of the ones that came before it. You'd sort of think that after a while the process would get easier. man, if it does, I would have thought it would happen by now, and it sure doesn't. Every book is still this incredibly painful birthing process, and you kind of block it out. I mean, once you're done, you forget just how hard it was to really kind of pull all those threads together, and you're so happy about this final thing being on the page. It's like, oh, well, that couldn't have been that bad, was it? Well, then you start the next one. It's like, oh, my God.
How can people find you online?
Yeah, well, they can find me online. My website is bfreemanbooks.com. That's all one word, bfreemanbooks.com. And then I'm also out on social media. Facebook is facebook.com/bfreemanfans, and Twitter and Instagram, bfreemanbooks. And, you know, as I said earlier, building relationships with readers is such an important and such a rewarding part of the business. I love hearing from readers. I love it when they reach out to me, whether it's by email or posting on my, Facebook or Twitter accounts, because, hearing what people think about the books and hearing them give me feedback, that's just a really special part of the process. So I feel very, very honored to be able to do what I do, and it's all about trying to deliver stories to readers. So I very much encourage people to reach out to me when they've read my books.
For Brian Freeman, minutes make the magic. He looks at his craft as a passionate profession, a 9-to-5 job that can always be improved upon. Like an elite athlete, he sees every event as a test, not just of his mental toughness, but of his ability to create compelling stories that keep readers coming back for more. Get to know Brian Freeman online at bfreemanbooks.com. And for an immersion in his art, check out the Ursulina, available in print, digital, and audio wherever books are sold. I'm Terry Shepard for Authors on the Air, and I'll see you in the next chapter.